great, thanks a lot, Barbara. Just maybe before I start, I think one of the interesting issues that money and basic income share is that it is also, the democratizing money is also a non-partisan issue. So, I could also quote Milton Friedman as a supporter of public money systems, funnily enough, but also, again, not maybe in exactly the way that I would see them implemented. So I think it's interesting that our topics kind of share those 2 points. So I'm going to just talk for a few minutes about money. I don't know how versed people are in the audience about money, but so forgive me if you've heard all this before. So money has been many things over time, from huge removable stones to seashells to gold to fancy bits of paper. But it's always served in society its kind of core function as being a medium of exchange, a way of facilitating trade where we don't both want what each other have. And who creates money has changed over time, but it has generally been in the interests of the powerful. So be it the king, and the present system, we would argue probably in the interests of the banks. So what I'd like to ask is a question. So who knows who creates money in our system? Is it the government? Should we do a show of hands? Is it us people? Is it the government? Or is it the banks? So yes. So the government does issue cash. It prints money. So about 3% of the money in the system is created by the government. About 97% is ones and zeros, which are created by banks as they make loans.
Is that the banks creating it, or is it actually us that create it, that we sign for that credit, and they just dupe us into how it's being created?
So definitely, hopefully we can get into a lot of those questions, but the short answer is the banks create it. But it is absolutely a mutual contract, because we also sign an agreement. But we can get into the details about that later. So the vast majority is created by the banks when we take a loan. So when you go to get a mortgage, the bank doesn't take that money out of the safe and give it to you. It literally creates that. That money didn't exist before you signed that agreement, and they create it out of nothing. So even once I've got to this stage, so you've got banks creating the majority of money out of nothing for their own kind of incentives, based on their own rules, most people still don't really consider the real need for reform in that area. And so I'm just going to take you through quickly some of the reasons why it's a really important area for reform, and what some of the benefits might be of doing that reform. So in our current system, if we need money, we need to be in debt. So if we want more money to circulate, if we want more trade to happen, if we want more exchanges to happen, somebody somewhere needs to get into more debt. There is no way at the moment in the system for it to create money without then creating that debt. So also then the mantra that we heard for a short while from this government, but we've heard over time, that if we all just stopped being in debt, then that would be a good thing, shows a fundamental misunderstanding of the current economic system. If there was nobody in debt, there would be no money, and we would collapse. And it's as simple as that. This present system needs debt. So when I kind of started to learn about that, I thought, well, at least if I keep myself out of debt, then I won't be a slave to this kind of interest machine. But some really interesting research by Positive Money and others show that the net interest that we pay on the money supply for borrowing this money from banks so that we can use it is about 200 billion a year. And so that is a direct transfer from society, from people, to financial institutions. And the other side of that, which is some really interesting research done by a German economist who died last year, called Margaret Kennedy, was doing some research into what component of prices that we pay. So if you go and buy something, be it a service, be it a good, what component of that is paying back interest to the system? And basically her research found, and it varies greatly from about 15%, maybe 70% of the price, but on average, 40% of the price you're paying for a good or a service is literally just servicing debt interest. So if we can remove, we're never going to remove all of the debt, and some of debt is in fact a good thing. You know, as David Graeber would say, you know, in fact a functional society, a functional community is a community of people who are all a little bit in debt to each other. The problem is not so much debt in itself, but all of us being indebted to a very few institutions to a very large degree, and that's what creates a lot of the problems. It also, the current money system, really promotes inequality. So the perception is now that if I have a little bit of money and I put it in the bank, well, hey, at least I am earning a little bit of interest on that, and so that's good. When you in fact take into account all the debt interest that you're paying through the normal goods and services that you buy and so on, it very quickly comes that only the top 10% of earners are in fact winning from this game. The other 90% of us are all losing money in interest payments. And so again, this is another shift of money from ordinary people up to the top 10%, and it's a continual shift. So, well, what the New Economics Foundation advocates and positive money, if you haven't looked at positive money, since I really recommend going to their site. They have some excellent videos explaining these complex ideas. So what we would like to do is return the money creation to being a public good. So you'd have an independent committee creating money on behalf of the people, debt-free. That money would continue to circulate. The exact figures on how much would be created on an average year varies, but it's probably somewhere in the region of about £50 billion. So that could be spent in many ways. It could either be given to the government to spend it in either in lieu of taxes, so we could all get a tax reduction. It could be spent on extra things that we really care about, but we can't seem to find the money for at the moment, green infrastructure, or, interestingly in today's debate, it could be handed out equally to everyone, every citizen amongst us. It wouldn't definitely cover, full subsistence, but it would be a start. It would also have many other benefits, which is reducing the overall level of debt. It would remove one of the big pressures on growth. So one of the reasons why we need to grow every year, and there's this mantra of growing, is because we constantly need more money in the system, because if we lose that money, then we lose the ability to pay the interest, and so it kind of feeds into that cycle of requiring growth and all the environmental issues that causes. It would reduce asset bubbles. We might actually be able to afford houses in London. And it would also eliminate the need for bank subsidies and things like that. So hopefully that's a little flavour. Definitely looking forward to getting into the discussion later. Cheers.